Stay down, sweetheart. You're in the wrong line and the wrong company. The words landed before anything else did, before the shape of the morning, before the gate, the guard booth, the slow visitor lane at the main entrance of a large army installation, before the smell of hot asphalt and diesel idling in the inspection lane. Just the voice and the man it belonged to, standing over a woman he had knocked flat to the pavement. She was on the ground because he had put her there. One shove, delivered with a shoulder, and the confidence of a man who had never once been made to answer for his hands. Her soft bag had spilled sideways. A paper folder had slid 2 feet across the concrete. And Roland Devlin, 51 years old, in a suit that cost more than the guard made in a month, stood over her with a phone against his ear and a smile that expected applause. She came up without a hand. No push off the pavement. No wince. No hand reaching for the counter to steady herself. She rose the way water rises when you tilt the glass, all at once, level. Weight already centered under her before her feet had finished the work. Like standing was a thing she had decided, not a thing the fall had allowed. She brushed grit from one palm, collected the folder, and set the bag upright. She said nothing. Devlin took the silence for what he wanted it to be. Fear. Or the good sense of someone who had just learned her place. He turned back to his phone, half a shoulder to her, and kept talking. No, I'm at the gate. There's a delay. Some woman. It's handled. He said handled the way men say it when nothing is. The line of visitors had gone quiet. A contractor 2 places back looked at his shoes. A young mother with a base sticker on her windshield rolled her window up an inch. Nobody moved. That was the thing about a man like Devlin. He filled a space so completely that the people in it forgot they outnumbered him. It was a Tuesday, 10:05 in the morning, the kind of ordinary hour a gate is built to swallow whole. 100 cars an hour, 1,000 faces a day. A checkpoint whose entire purpose was to make sure that nothing memorable ever happened at it. 2 lanes for vehicles, 1 for foot traffic, a low brick guard booth with tinted glass, and a striped arm that rose and fell all day like a slow metronome. Beyond it, the flat green apron of the parade field, empty in the sun. A flag on a white pole, moving a little. Not much. The most routine square of ground on the entire installation. Roland Devlin had walked into it at 19 minutes to a meeting and decided the ground belonged to him. The woman was 54. Brunette, hair pulled back plain, a few threads of gray she had not bothered to fight. Travel clothes, dark and unremarkable. No jewelry. A watch turned so the face lay against the inside of her wrist. 1 soft bag. No logo. Nothing on it that named her or her business. She looked to Devlin like exactly the kind of person a gate produced by the dozen. Temp help. A vendor. A ride-share fare who had wandered into the wrong queue. She looked at the concrete where she had landed, and then at him, and then at nothing. She waited. Master Sergeant Terence Okafor came out of the guard booth at a walk that wanted to be a run and would not let itself. 46 years old, 20 of them on gates like this one, on 3 continents, in weather that peeled paint. He had watched the shove on the camera and again through the booth glass, and both times something in it had put a cold finger on the back of his neck. Not the violence. He had seen violence. He had stood in the aftermath of the real thing on roads that did not have gates, or cameras, or striped arms, and a shove in a visitor line did not move him. It was the woman. It was how she stood up. He had watched 10,000 people get knocked down in his life, in one way or another. They all did the same things. They put a hand out. They flinched. They looked around for the face that would tell them whether to be angry or ashamed. They performed the fall, because a fall is a social event, and everyone who has one is looking, in that first half second, for an audience to tell them how to feel about it. She had not looked for anyone. She had simply corrected the problem of being on the ground, the way a person corrects a crooked picture, and then waited. And a man who has spent 20 years learning to read people in the 2 seconds before they reach his booth knew, without a single fact to support it, that he had just watched someone who did not think of the ground as a place she could be kept. "Sir." His voice carried the flat authority of a man who did not raise it because he never needed to. "Step back from her. Now." Devlin lowered the phone an inch. "And you are?" "The man telling you to step back." For 1 second, no more, the woman met Okafor's eyes, and in that second, she gave him the smallest shake of her head. A 1/4 inch, left and right. "Don't." Okafor was a senior non-commissioned officer of the United States Army. He took orders from a chain of command he could recite in his sleep. He did not take them from unbadged civilians in the visitor lane. He took that one. He stopped. He stepped back half a pace, and he could not, for the life of him, have told anyone why. They took it inside because that was the procedure, and Okafor believed in procedure the way some men believe in gravity. The visitor control center was small and bright, and smelled of floor wax and old coffee. A counter, a rack of forms, 4 plastic chairs bolted to a rail. A young military policeman stood at the end of the counter. Private First Class Lacey Bourne, 20 years old, 8 months on the job, still new enough to be honest without calculating the cost. Bourne brought the woman a paper cup of water and set a chair straight for her. "Ma'am, please. Are you hurt?" "No, thank you, Private." The woman took the cup and did not drink it. She held it in 2 hands, flat on the table, and left it there. Bourne blinked. Private. She had not shown a badge. She had not seen a rank. There was nothing in the room to tell her that Bourne was a private and not a specialist or a sergeant. And yet she had read it off the girl like a line of print. It was not a guess. Bourne could tell the difference between a guess and a reading, and this was a reading. The woman had taken in the way Bourne carried herself, the newness of the boots, the too careful way she squared the chair, the 8 months of habit not yet worn into instinct, and she had priced all of it correctly in one glance and set the number down without a flicker. The way you would read a room's temperature off the fog on a window. Bourne had met exactly 2 kinds of people who did that. Very good first sergeants, and officers so senior that reading a person in a glance had stopped being a skill and become a reflex. The woman in the traveling clothes did not look like either, which, Bourne thought, was itself a kind of answer she did not yet know how to hear. Devlin came through the door talking. "I want her removed. I want it on paper that she obstructed a federal contractor. I have a 10:45 with the Garrison Contracting Office, and I am now 19 minutes from being late to it, because this person decided to stand in my way." Okafor set a form on the counter. "Your name and firm, sir." Devlin gave them at length the firm, the bid, the 8-figure logistics contract in its final round, the names of the people he golfed with. He recited his own importance the way other men recite an alibi, and he watched the room to see it land. Then Okafor turned to the woman. "Ma'am, your name and your purpose on the installation." "Business," she said. "With?" "Command." "When's your appointment?" "Today." 3 questions, 3 words, each one exactly right and not one syllable past it. A person with nothing to hide fills the silence. A person who has spent 30 years learning that words are a resource does not. Okafor watched her hands. 20 years of Gates had taught him to read people by what they did with their hands while they waited. The drumming, the phone, the ring twisted around and around, the boarding pass folded and unfolded until it went soft at the crease. Waiting is the most honest thing a person does, because it is the one time they forget they are being watched. Hers did nothing at all. They lay flat on either side of a paper cup she would not drink. Still. Composed. Not the stillness of a person holding herself together, but the stillness of a person who had nowhere she urgently needed her hands to be. He noticed the rest of it then, the way you notice the second thing once the first has caught you. No jewelry, no rings, no bracelet, nothing to catch a light or a grip. A watch worn with the face turned in against the pulse, the way people wear them who have learned not to let a glint give them away. One bag, soft-sided, no maker's name on it, nothing printed, nothing that announced a brand or a school or a team. She had arrived sterile, scrubbed of every ordinary handle a stranger uses to get a purchase on who you are. That was the tell, though he did not yet have a name for what it was telling him. People did not usually erase themselves that carefully, unless being read was a thing that had once cost them. Devlin leaned over the counter and jabbed a finger toward her. 5 minutes. If this person is not gone in 5 minutes, Master Sergeant, I will personally see that those stripes come off your sleeve. Do you understand me? The woman spoke a full sentence for the first time. It was quiet, and it was almost kind. You should sit down, Mr. Devlin. This is going to get longer than your meeting. Devlin laughed. Bourne did not. And Okafor, without deciding to, had already picked up the desk phone and begun to dial a number he could not yet have justified dialing to anyone who asked. A man like Devlin does not simply wait. He builds. He turned to the room, the two visitors still in line behind the glass, the junior contractor who had come in on his heels, and he began to narrate, not to them, through them. You saw it. I was walking. She stepped in front of me. I steadied myself. That's all. I'm the one who got bumped. He pointed up at the small black dome of the camera in the corner, as if it were a witness he had already coached. It's all on there, all of it. It was, in fact, all on there. That was the part he had not thought through. The junior contractor who had come in on Devlin's heels, a younger man with a lanyard of his own, and a future he had decided was tied to Devlin's, nodded along on cue. That's right. I saw it. She was in the way. He had seen no such thing. He had been 3 steps back and looking at his phone. But he had a bid to protect, too, and a boss to please, and the truth was a luxury he could not currently afford. That was how it worked, Okafor thought. A loud man did not need to lie well. He only needed one frightened person willing to lie with him, and the story grew a second root. Bourne's jaw tightened. She stepped to Okafor and said it low, for him alone. Master Sergeant. I saw it clean. He shoved her. She never touched him. He put her on the ground. I was 6 feet away. It wasn't close. Devlin had ears like a man who listened for advantage. He wheeled on her. What did you say? You're a child in a costume. You understand that slandering a federal contractor is actionable? You understand I can end a little career like yours before it starts? The woman turned her head. That was all she did. She turned her head and looked at Devlin, level, unbothered, patient as stone, and the looking reached him in a way the words had not. He faltered mid-sentence, lost the thread. There was something in the flatness of her attention that felt less like being watched by a person and more like being measured by a scale. He covered it with volume. What are you looking at? She did not answer that. She held his eyes a moment longer, long enough that he had to be the one to look away, and something in the room shifted a half-degree that no one but Okafor felt. A man who has spent his life talking louder than the room learns to feel the exact instant the room stops, needing him to be quiet, and starts wanting him to be. Devlin felt it and did not understand it, and not understanding it made him louder. Then she reached into the soft bag, took out a small plain notebook and a pen, and wrote 2 short lines. Unhurried. The pen moved and stopped. She did not write the way a frightened person writes, in a hurry, to have a record before it slips. She wrote the way a person writes who has filed 10,000 reports and knows that the calm ones are the ones that hold up. "What are you writing?" Devlin demanded. "You don't get to write anything about me." She closed the notebook. "The time," she said, "and the name. If you have ever stood in a room and watched a loud man be believed over a quiet woman, watched the volume win while the truth waited its turn, then you already know the particular kind of patience this takes, and you know it is not weakness. Stay with her. It is worth the wait. And if stories like this one are why you're here, subscribe to Honor Tales, because this is the only thing we do." Devlin checked his watch. 10:22. He had decided, somewhere in the last minute, that the fastest way out of this room was to do the thing he did best, to move an obstacle himself. He started around the end of the counter. Before his hands, though, he reached for the thing men like him trust more than their hands: the process. He took out his phone, pulled up a contact, and dialed with his thumb held out so the room could watch him do it. He put it on speaker for the same reason. "Marcus, it's Roland. I'm at the main gate, and I've been assaulted and delayed by an unbadged woman who refuses to leave. I want her trespassed off the installation, and I want the delay noted against her and nobody else. Can you make that happen from your desk?" "Good. Yes. Now." A voice on the other end. A mid-level garrison contracting officer Devlin had spent 2 years and 3 dinners cultivating, said that he would see what he could do, that he would make a call, that the woman should be escorted out pending it. It was a small, ugly piece of leverage, and it worked the way such pieces usually work. On paper, in that moment, the woman's position got worse. She had no rank on display, no orders anyone in the room had seen, no name she would give. And now, a powerful man with a relationship in the contracting office was building a record with her at the bottom of it. This was the part men like Devlin understood in their bones, and men like Okafor had to learn the hard way: that the record is a country of its own, and whoever writes first draws the map. Devlin had spent 30 years learning that if you narrate an event fast enough and loud enough and to the right desk, your version hardens into the official one before the slower, truer version has even found a pen. He was not trying to win an argument at the gate. He was trying to win the file. And the file, he knew, would outlive the morning. What he did not know was that the quiet woman had spent 30 years on the other side of exactly that country, writing the slow, true versions, and that she had recognized his play the instant he made it, the way a chess player recognizes an opening she has answered 1,000 times. Okafor felt the box close around him, a civilian complainant, a bid relationship, a demand now, in writing, coming down the wire. He was a master sergeant with a form in front of him and no cover on the horizon. He looked at the woman. She gave him one line, and she gave it to him the way a senior hand gives a junior the answer without making him feel the size of the gap. "Do your job by the book, Master Sergeant. The book protects you here." She did not pull rank. She did not say a word about who she was. She simply pointed him at the one thing that could not be taken from him, the correct, boring, unglamorous procedure, and told him to stand inside it. And as Devlin's voice climbed, hers went the other way. The louder the room got, the smaller her movements became. She re-centered in the chair, hands flat, breath slow and long and even. Storm water finds the low ground and waits, and the waiting is not surrender. It is the shape patience takes right before it moves. There was a pause on the line. The contracting officer, a man named Marcus, a mid-grade civilian who had traded 3 dinners for a relationship he was now being asked to spend all at once, could be heard breathing. He had said yes too fast at the top of the call, in the reflex of a man who does favors to keep them available, and now the size of the favor was arriving. Trespass a woman. Note a delay against her, on a recorded gate line, over the word of a bidder in a final round. "Roland," the voice said, careful now, let me make a call and understand who's actually there before I— There's nothing to understand. Have her removed." Devlin had heard the hesitation and hated it. Hesitation was contagion. "Marcus, I have carried your office through 2 budget cycles. Have her removed." The contracting officer's voice came back cooler, with the specific discomfort of a man who has just felt the ground move under a favor and cannot yet see how far it will slide. He told Bourne, because Devlin held the phone toward her, to escort the woman out front. He said it, and then, tellingly, he said he would call back, and the line went dead in a way that sounded less like an order and more like a man backing out of a room. Bourne froze. She looked at Okafor. She looked at the woman. The woman nodded once. Permission, not defeat. "It's all right, Private," she said. "Walk me out front." They stepped together toward the front of the visitor center, out toward the wide, flat green of the parade field, the girl half a step behind the woman she thought she was removing. And on the threshold, the woman stopped. She tilted her head, a half-inch, no more, and went still in a new way, listening to something the rest of them hadn't heard yet. Okafor stayed with the paperwork, and the paperwork would not sit still in his hands. He kept coming back to 3 things and could not make them separate. The way she had read Bourne's rank off nothing. The vocabulary, business, command, today, each word chosen like a round, loaded by hand. And the stand. The way she had come off that pavement without a hand, level and unhurried, as if the ground had done her a small favor she intended to repay. He was a man who trusted his gut, because his gut had kept him alive in places without gates. So he chased the one thread he could actually pull. He opened the day's arrival log and the protocol manifest, the sheet that listed expected senior visitors and distinguished visitor movements. And there, in the 1000 window, he found a line that stopped his breath. A movement flagged under protocol. No name printed, no photograph. Details restricted. Arrival window marked, in the language of people who do not like to be predictable, flexible. Okafor had processed 1,000 of these in 20 years. He knew exactly what a blacked-out line with a flexible window and no photo meant. It meant somebody very senior was coming in quiet, on purpose, and did not want a fuss made. He set the sheet down very carefully, the way you set down something that might be live. He ran the pieces again, slower, because a man does not act on a thing this size until he has walked all the way around it. A distinguished visitor movement, restricted, no photo, flexible window. In the exact hour a woman had appeared at his gate, who read ranks off nothing, spoke in single correct words, arrived scrubbed of every handle, and stood up off the pavement like the ground was beneath her in more ways than one. Any one of those, alone, was nothing. A coincidence. A careful traveler. But he had learned on other gates, in other countries, that when 4 small wrong-feeling things line up pointing the same direction, the honest move is to stop calling them coincidences and start calling them a warning. 20 years had taught him the cost of both mistakes. He had once treated a nobody like a somebody and wasted an afternoon. He had once, early, treated a somebody like a nobody, and he still remembered the specific temperature of that regret. Given the 2, he knew which one he would rather carry home. Then he did a thing he did not have to do. He crossed to Devlin, took him by the elbow, and steered him 2 steps off to the side, out of the room's hearing. "Mr. Devlin." Quiet, almost gentle. If she's who that flag says she might be, sir, you want to be somewhere else when the rest of this arrives. That's not a threat. That's the only favor you're going to get today. Take it." Devlin pulled his elbow free. "Are you people trying to intimidate me? Do you have any idea?" And he waved the whole thing off, the gate, the woman, the master sergeant, the flag, all of it, with the flat certainty of a man who had never once been wrong in a way that cost him. Okafor let him go. Some men you can warn, some men you can only watch. And a memory came up in him then, unbidden, from the far side of 2008. A story that had gone around a dusty theater that year, passed between senior enlisted men in chow lines and on smoke breaks, the way the true ones always were. Quietly, without embellishment, because the true ones did not need any. A story about a captain, about a kill box and a stalled truck, and a major carried out on a woman's back across 800 meters of open ground, while the road came apart around her. He remembered the way the men who told it had told it. Not loud, not thrilled, but with the particular flat respect that soldiers reserve for the small number of people who have done the thing everyone privately fears they would fail. He had never known the name in the story. He had never needed it. It had lived in him for 18 years as a kind of standard, a high-water mark for what a person could choose to do when choosing wrong was so much easier. He looked at the stillness of the woman on the threshold, and the flag on the sheet, and the 18-year-old story, and the three of them slid together and locked like a bolt going home. He looked at the stillness of the woman on the threshold, and the flag on the sheet, and the 18-year-old story, and the three of them slid together and locked like a bolt going home. Stay with me here, because the quiet woman is about to stop being quiet. And when a person like this decides the waiting is over, it happens all at once. If you want to see it, and if you want more stories that end the way this one is about to, take 1 second and subscribe to Honor Tales. Far out across the parade field, low against the tree line, a dark dot resolved itself into rotor blades and the flat, hard beat of an aircraft inbound. Okafor heard it before he saw it, and he knew, with the certainty of 20 years at Gates, that his morning had just changed owners. To understand why a 4-star general would send his own aircraft to a gate, you have to go back 18 years, to a road that should have killed everyone on it. 2008, a narrow wadi, walls of rock on both sides, one road running through it like a seam in the world, a convoy of 3 vehicles strung out along 800 meters of open ground when the ambush opened up. The lid truck stalled and slewed. The middle one took the first fire. And in the third, a company commander named Captain Adele Marchetti, 36 years old, made the call that every manual tells you not to make, and every good officer sometimes has to. She turned back into it. 41 minutes. That was how long it lasted, though no one living it could have told you the number. 41 minutes of noise and grit, and the particular arithmetic of a person deciding over and over that the next 10 meters were survivable. She reached the wrecked middle truck on foot. Inside it, pinned and bleeding badly from the leg, was a young major, an operations officer riding along that day, out of his own vehicle by bad luck, named Hollis Brand. She reached the wrecked middle truck on foot, across ground that had no cover on it. Worth the name, low and fast, and counting her own steps, because counting was the only thing that kept the fear folded small enough to carry. The door was crushed. Brand was inside it, conscious, gray, a tourniquet already cinched on his thigh by a hand that had run out of time to do more. He told her to leave him. They always told you to leave them, the good ones. It was how you knew which ones to carry. She got him out. She got him across open ground with his arm over her shoulders and most of his weight in her legs, 40 meters at a stretch, down and up, learning the terrible weight of a grown man who cannot help you carry himself. And when a second soldier went down beside her, halfway back, she set Brand behind a low fold of rock and went back into it and dragged the second man too. One fist knotted in his gear, heels digging, the whole world narrowed to the next impossible meter, and then the one after that. 800 meters. She would remember the number for the rest of her life, the way you remember the number of a thing you should not have survived. She carried out a major who would one day wear 4 stars, and she left a sergeant who would always be 24. Sergeant Ruben Ortega did not come back with them, 24 years old. He had put himself between the open door and the incoming fire so that the people behind him could move, and he had held that spot, feeding rounds and shouting corrections, until holding it was all he had left to give, and then a moment past that. He had bought the 800 meters. Every one of them had his name on it, whether the people who crossed them ever knew it or not. When it was over, and the vehicles were clear, and the count was done in the flat, exhausted arithmetic of after, his was the one name that did not answer to it. In the years after, on the rare nights she let herself go back, Marchetti held both facts in the same set of hands and refused to let either one round off. She had saved a man who would rise higher than either of them had dreamed. She had lost a man who never got the chance to. Both were true. Both belonged to her. She never once let herself pretend the great thing canceled the terrible one, or that the terrible one erased the great. She carried them the way she carried everything, level, without a hand, weight-centered. Brand recovered. Brand rose. Major to colonel to general, a star, and then another, and then 2 more, until he sat at the top of a combatant command with tens of thousands of lives inside his signature. And in every posting along that climb, he kept one standing order with his staff, repeated to each new aide until they learned to take it seriously. If Marchetti's name ever crossed his gate, anywhere he held command, he was to be told before anything else happened. Before the meeting, before the motorcade, before the day. For 18 years the order had waited, unused, a debt kept warm. This morning, a duty officer running a routine check against an arrival manifest had seen a name he'd been briefed to watch for, matched it to a blacked-out protocol line, and made a single phone call to a general's aide. And the standing order, 18 years old, came into land. 10:38. Devlin was out of patience and out of runway, and men like Devlin, when they run out of both, reach for the only tool they have left. He decided he would walk the woman off the property himself. He came across the front room in 3 strides and took her by the upper arm, hard, fingers dug in, the grip of a man used to steering people who could not afford to object. He turned her by it, or tried to. Nothing moved. She did not resist. That was the strange part, the part Bourne would try to describe later, and never quite manage. The woman did not pull away, did not stiffen, did not fight the grip. She simply set her feet. Some small adjustment in the hips and the shoulders, nothing anyone could have named. A redistribution so quiet it looked like she had done nothing at all. And Devlin's pull, which had turned boardrooms and bent junior staff and moved every obstacle of his adult life, moved nothing. It was like hauling on a mooring line and finding the ship on the other end. The shock of pulling with your whole weight against a thing that has simply, calmly, decided not to come. He pulled again, harder, embarrassed now, because a man cannot fail to move a woman a foot shorter than himself in front of witnesses and let it stand. Nothing. She watched him do it. That was the worst part for him. that she did not brace against him so much as observe him, the way you might watch a child tug at a locked door, with a patience that had something almost like pity in it. For the first time all morning, she looked at him with something close to a smile. Small, cold, almost sorry for him. "Sir, let go of her." Bourne stepped in, one hand out, doing the brave, stupid, necessary thing. "Let go." Devlin shoved her, backhanded her aside with his free arm, and the young MP went into the counter hip first and hard, the paper cup of water spinning off the edge and bursting on the floor. Okafor was already moving. Radio up, voice flat and fast and clean, the report going out with every element the way it would need to read on a page in a week. Time, location, aggressor, victims, the camera reference, the word assault used once and correctly, and not walked back. He had done 1,000 of these. He did this one the way you do the one that matters, every clause built to survive a lawyer. Assault, main gate visitor center, 10:38 hours, 2 victims, 1 aggressor, civilian, description following, to be detained. He did it, he would realize later, exactly the way she had told him to. By the book she had pointed him at an hour before, quietly, without ever telling him why the book was about to matter so much. And the woman let the room see, at last, one single degree of the real thing. She reached up with 2 fingers and took Devlin's hand off her arm. One motion. No drama. No wrenching. No display. She simply removed his grip the way you remove a hand from a door you intend to close, and for all his weight and all his certainty, he could not hold on. "That's the 2nd time today," she said, "that you've put your hands on someone smaller than you." Her voice did not rise. It got quieter, and the quiet had an edge in it now that hadn't been there before. There won't be a third. The smile she gave him then was the tell she had been hiding all morning, finally turned all the way around and aimed. It was not cruel. It was worse than cruel for him. It was certain. Devlin's own certainty scrambled to answer. He drew himself up, chest out, the old reliable question loaded and fired. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yes," she said. "That's the problem." Outside, the beat of the rotors dropped and swelled as the aircraft flared over the parade field. The wash of it rolled across the grass and flattened it in a wide green circle, and it reached the visitor center and rattled the glass in the front doors. Every head at the gate turned toward the sound, every head except hers. The aircraft settled onto the parade field with the fussless competence of a machine that carried important people for a living. A command helicopter, dark and clean, 4 stars stenciled small and unmistakable near the nose. The engine spun down from a scream to a roar to a heavy idling thud. The first person off it was not the general. A colonel came down from the side door and did not walk so much as cross the grass at the controlled near run of an aide who has been told the reception went wrong. Colonel Dana Whitlock, aide-de-camp, in a service uniform pressed to a knife's edge, closed the last of the distance and stopped 3 feet from the quiet woman in the traveling clothes. Spine straight, heels together, hand up in a salute so crisp it might have been machined. "General Marchetti." Whitlock's voice carried over the dying rotors, pitch to be heard and to be heard clearly. "The commander sends his apologies for the reception. He'd like to bring you in himself." The word moved through the visitor center like a current through water. "General." Okafor came to attention before his mind had finished the sentence. 20 years of training standing his body up while his thoughts were still catching. Bourne's mouth opened and stayed that way, one hand still on the counter she had been shoved into, staring at the woman who had called her private off nothing, and had, it turned out, known exactly what she was looking at. and Devlin. Devlin's face made the whole journey in the space of 4 seconds, and every foot of the road showed. First the contempt, still there out of habit, the reflex of a man reaching for the sneer that had always worked. Then the confusion, as the word general refused to fit anywhere in the story he had been telling all morning. Then the disbelief, the mind's last stand, the desperate insistence that this could not be, that the temp, help, the vendor, the woman he had knocked flat and told to stay down. Then the recognition. Slow, total, sick. It arrived in his body before it finished arriving in his face. A draining, a settling, the particular pallor of a man whose entire morning has just been repriced in front of him and found to be worth the opposite of what he paid. He had told a lieutenant general to stay down. He had said it twice. He had grabbed her arm, and he had shoved a soldier into a counter in front of her. And he had done it all while a blacked-out protocol flag sat on a clipboard 40 feet away with her movement on it. There is no meeting on earth important enough to be late to the way he was, now late to the truth of his own morning. General Hollis Brand came off the aircraft a beat behind his aide. 58 years old, 4 stars on each shoulder. A big man who had learned long ago that he no longer needed to fill a room because rooms rearranged themselves around him on their own. He did not come at a march. He did not come to loom. He crossed the grass with the plain directness of a man walking toward someone he has been waiting 18 years to reach, and when he got to her, he did not salute first. He took her hand in both of his. "You were going to walk in the gate," he said, "and not tell me." There was a roughness in it, under the parade ground steadiness. 18 years, Adele, and you still do that. Didn't want the fuss, Hollis. She let him hold her hand, and something in her face eased a fraction, the only softening she had allowed all morning. Then she tipped her head 1 inch toward Devlin. "Found some anyway." Brand followed the tilt of her head. He took in the spilled water on the floor, the young MP holding her hip, the master sergeant at rigid attention, the civilian in the expensive suit with the color draining out of his face, and his mouth already opening on an explanation that was not going to arrive in time. He read the whole scene the way a man reads terrain he has crossed 100 times, quickly, completely, and without any apparent effort. The crushed cup and the shoved private, and the arm Devlin had been gripping, all resolving into a single clear picture that needed no narration. For 1 moment, the 4-star general looked at the man who had knocked Adele Marchetti to the pavement, and there was nothing warm in it, and nothing theatrical in it either. Just the flat, total attention of someone deciding how much of his morning this was worth. Not much, the look concluded. She was fine. She was always fine. That was the whole cruelty and the whole gift of her, that people kept being allowed to underestimate her because she never gave them a reason not to, and she never seemed to mind the cost of it the way he minded it on her behalf. He turned to the MPs coming through the door and gave them 4 words, without heat, without theater. Take his hand seriously. The MPs moved on Devlin, not for the rank he had insulted, but for the assault Okafor had already called in clean, the documentable thing. The hands he had put on 2 people in 1 morning. The rank did not arrest him. The record did. Devlin, as they walked him toward the vehicle, found his voice one last time and called back over his shoulder that this was a mistake, that they had no idea, that his firm... And he stopped, because in that half-second he had finally understood, in real time, exactly what was about to happen to the firm. The reckoning was quiet, and it was fast, and it was not the thing a story like this usually reaches for. There was no court-martial, because a court-martial was not Devlin's to be given. He was a civilian. He would answer to civilian law for what his hands had done, in a civilian courtroom, on the strength of a gate camera and 2 victims and a master sergeant's clean report. That was all. It was enough. But the contract, the 8-figure logistics bid his firm had ridden into its final round, the reason he had been at the gate at all, that ended before the rotor blade stopped turning. The Garrison Contracting Office did not need a general to tell it what to do. It needed only the facts, correctly delivered. That a bidder in the final round had assaulted a woman in the visitor line, that he had shoved a military policeman into a counter, that he had, on a recorded line, attempted to lean on a relationship inside the contracting office to have a witness trespassed and a record falsified in his favor. Any one of those was disqualifying. Together, they were not a decision anyone had to agonize over. The firm's bid was pulled from the round that afternoon, its site credentials revoked, its access to the installation ended before the end of the business day. And the relationship Devlin had spent 2 years and 3 dinners building, the mid-grade officer named Marcus, who had said yes too fast, did not save him. It ended him. Because the moment that officer understood what he had almost done, and to whom, self-preservation did the rest, he documented the call, forwarded the recording, and got as far from Roland Devlin as a man can get from a name. And every desk he touched on his way out added another line to the record. The padded numbers no one had yet caught would now never need catching, because there was no longer a bid to hide them in. The whole edifice came down, not because a powerful person willed it, but because the process, applied correctly, has no patience for men who mistake billing for immunity. Devlin had lived his whole life believing that leverage was a thing you owned. He learned in a single afternoon that it is only ever a thing you borrow, and that it comes due all at once. Colonel Whitlock, walking beside Marchetti toward the aircraft, asked the question an aide is supposed to ask. "Ma'am, would you like to add a personal statement to the assault complaint? Given how it started, it would carry weight." Marchetti did not slow down. "No." "Ma'am?" "He'll answer to the record, not to me. The record's enough." She said it without heat, the way she said most things. "I've got a job to start on this post. I'm not going to spend the first hour of it making a small man my cause. Let the process have him. That's what it's for. And here, at the end, is the thing worth carrying out of this with you. The people most able to bring the hammer down are so often the ones least interested in swinging it, because they have long since learned the difference between justice and appetite. If that lands somewhere true for you, if you have ever chosen the quiet, correct thing over the loud, satisfying one, leave a word in the comments and subscribe to Honor Tales and stay for the next one. She found Bourne near the counter, still holding herself where the edge had caught her hip, still, absurdly, holding the crushed paper cup she had picked up off the floor out of some reflex to tidy the room. "Private." Marchetti stopped in front of her. "Look at me a second." Bourne looked. "You stepped toward the trouble when the whole room stepped back from it. You put yourself between a man twice your size and someone you thought needed it, and you did it for a stranger, for nothing, when it would have been easier and safer to see nothing at all." Marchetti's voice was level, and it was not soft, and that was what made it land. That's the one thing in this business that can't be taught. Everything else I can train into a person in a year. Not that. I'm going to make sure the right people know your name. She turned to Okafor, who had unbent from attention and stood now simply as a senior non-commissioned officer at the end of a very long morning. "Master Sergeant, put her up for a leadership development slot today, before you talk yourself out of it. A beat. And thank you. You went by the book when the book was the hard road and the easy road had a contractor's phone number on it. I saw it. I'll remember it. Okafor found his voice. Ma'am, if I'd known. If you'd known, it wouldn't have counted. She almost smiled. You did right by a stranger. That's the only kind of right that tells me anything about a man. Okafor did not trust himself to say more, so he said the only thing that was safe. Yes, ma'am. And then, because it was true, and because a morning like this one comes to a man once in a career. It was an honor, General. She looked at him a beat longer than the words required, and gave him a short nod that he would carry for the rest of his service. The nod of a senior soldier telling a junior one, without a single wasted word, that she had seen exactly what he was made of and found it good. Bourne stood by the counter and watched the woman she had tried to remove from the installation walk out of it under 4 stars escort. She would tell the story badly for years, she knew, because the part that mattered had no drama in it. Not the helicopter. Not the salute. The part that mattered was a woman getting up off the pavement without a hand and calling her private, and remembering her name at the end of a morning that had every excuse to forget it. That was the part Bourne would try to become. She walked with Brand across the flattened grass to the waiting aircraft, the two of them side by side, 18 years, and one road between them, and neither one saying much, because the ones who were there never need to. You still carry more than you set down, Brand said. Old habit, she said. She climbed up beside the man she had once carried out, and the door came shut, and the engine spun back up from a thud to a roar to a scream. The aircraft lifted off the parade field, banked once over the gate she had walked to that morning without a name, and was gone over the tree line. Behind it the post went on with its ordinary day, a spilled cup mopped up, a form filed clean, a young private staring at the sky with something new and unbreakable settling into place behind her eyes. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.